If you're a practice owner, a healthcare practice owner, and you feel burnt out or like you're fighting an uphill battle, here's the one thing that I would recommend that I believe is going to make a huge difference in your work life, in the way you view your business, and ultimately, I'm not going to make any guarantees, but I think you'll see an increase in profitability and even net revenue at the end of the day. Hey there, Rafi from Rehab U Practice Solutions here, and let me ask you a question. Do you want to differentiate your healthcare company, whether it's a device, a technology, a software, or even a clinic, from your competitors? Do you want to align your services with your most targeted and most valuable healthcare stakeholder or healthcare buyer? Do you want to create a consistent message to drive business development strategy for that specific target market? And do you want to leverage industry insight and expertise to identify your most valuable service that you provide your healthcare buyers? If the answer is yes, then check out the Healthcare Positioning Alignment Workshop that we do at Rehab U. In that workshop, we will help you answer the question, basically, value to whom? And we will build and help you build a business development strategy aimed at driving qualified leads into your sales pipeline. Because a positioning strategy, a marketing strategy, doesn't do you any good if it doesn't end up with sales calls being booked, right? So if you want to learn more about that and how we can help you do that, head on over to positioning.rehabupracticesolutions.com. That's positioning.rehabupracticesolutions.com. Okay, this week we are going to circle back on a topic that I covered recently on an interview with a conversation, or during a conversation that I had with Paul Singh from Strata PT. He was interviewing me for his podcast, and this topic came up, and I thought, you know what? This is something that warrants a little bit more exploration. So the topic was, or the idea that came up in conversation was, is healthcare, private practice healthcare specifically, a bad business? And what do I mean by that? If you look at the forums, the Facebook groups, the social media, LinkedIn, we hear a lot of negativity about healthcare as a business model. Unless you're a big, giant corporate conglomerate, maybe you own a hospital system or multiple hospital systems, or you're in a big chain of practices, for example, a mid-regional or even a national chain of healthcare practices, the general feeling or sentiment in the market by all those people that are running those small practices, maybe they've got a location or two, maybe they've got a few locations, they've got 20 to 50 employees, they're not doing the type of volume that like a hospital would, right? The general sentiment when you talk to any of those practice owners or business owners is it's just a hard business to be in. It's a bad business. It's high input, costs a lot of capital to keep it running. There's low margins that are decreasing every year. Medicare comes out. I think this last physician fee schedule, there's going to be like a 2.5% decrease in the fee schedule for like physical therapy, for example. So people see this and they're like, oh man, there goes 2% more. It's eating into our margins. There's declining reimbursements, increased administrative costs to do it. There's more pre-authorization requirements than ever. We're spending a lot of our team's resources and time not delivering care, but doing the paperwork required to bill for the care, to get paid for the care that we deliver, right? And we hear it almost all the time. I feel like every year it ramps up. There's low margins, increasing cost, decreasing reimbursement, and then staffing issues, right? Clinicians are burning out. They're leaving the field entirely. And I sit on a couple of boards for organizations that are involved with credentialing new clinicians. And on the academic side, the negative thinking is coming through and saying, okay, look, if you look over time, the number of allied healthcare professional applicants to programs every year is going down across the boards. Physical therapy, nursing, occupational therapy, all of those healthcare professions are seeing a decrease in the number of applicants to graduate and to baccalaureate programs, and doctorate programs, which means, theoretically speaking, if you're projecting down, it means down the line there's going to be fewer clinicians to even pull from to fill and to staff these clinics. So, and these are just like the most common issues cited by people within the industry. The general sentiment is, if I could get out of my business, I would, right? And I talk to practice owners all the time that are kind of on this edge. They feel like they're fighting an uphill battle. It's always stressful. They're, worried about what happens, when Medicare comes out with their cuts next year, and what happens with United Healthcare and their authorization, or will telehealth go away, or supervision for therapy assistants getting changed, all this kind of stuff. And it's just like a big general negative milieu in the industry. But as Paul brought up in this conversation, which I also agree with him is that there's one group of people who don't think private practice healthcare is a bad investment. And that group of people is private equity firms or private equity bankers, right? Private equity firms have been increasing their activity in acquiring and investing in private healthcare practices. In the allied health space, we're seeing it on the musculoskeletal side with PE firms buying physical therapy practices. There's a large physical therapy chain that I think it was the tail end of last year got acquired, or there was like a $1.2 billion investment from a PE firm. This practice ended up shutting down some of the local clinics in our area to refocus on a few different markets. But it was a big deal. It was a large investment by a private equity firm into the physical therapy space. And we're seeing that continue to happen. There are practices that are out there that are getting acquired and capitalized by private equity firms. And the reality is private equity bankers and private equity investors, PE firms, are not in the business of losing money. And they're definitely not in the business of investing into losing businesses, right? So what I mentioned to Paul in this interview was that if you think about what they're looking for, the private equity firms, they're looking for double-digit returns. They're looking sometimes for quick turnarounds on that investment, that ROI, and they're looking for areas with potential huge growth. So if you look objectively at the private healthcare space, and now let's take physical therapy because those are the people that I'm talking a lot with. Let's look at that objectively, at the industry objectively. So private practice, let's say physical therapy as an example, or occupational therapy, ancillary therapy services as an example, really have the potential to be a great business for a few reasons. Number one, there's built-in future demand growth. And part of that is, especially in the United States, we've got this aging population. And as people age, they need more therapy services as an example. So we can project out over the next 5, 10, 15 years that there's going to be such a great demand increase in physical and occupational therapy services. There are competitive barriers to entry. Now, whether or not you agree with it or not, or you think that it needs to be changed, currently as it stands, you need to have an educational background, from a accredited university. Not only that, you need to pass a national board examination, and then you also need to pull and acquire a license to practice in whatever jurisdiction you want to practice in. So regardless of whether or not you think licensing and credentialing services do more to protect the interests of the industry rather than the general public, which there is some evidence for that one way or the other. On both sides, I can see it. And I've sat on state regulatory boards for the state of Georgia, and I sit on a national credentialing board or certificate board for occupational therapy here in the United States. So I can see both sides of the argument, where one can say licensing does cause, at the very least, it ensures competency of the clinicians that are treating patients, and that is a general benefit to society and protects the general public from undue injury or harm. And then you can also see the other side of the coin, where professional organizations, typically at the state level, of course it has been done at the national level, but it's just easier to influence statutory regulations and stuff like that at the states, that organizations or industries or disciplines will use professional licensing as a way to limit competition in their space or field, which could theoretically have negative consequences and impacts on society, right? If you're decreasing the amount of clinicians able to deliver a service, for example, you're decreasing access, increasing costs, all of that kind of stuff. So regardless of where you sit on that spectrum, whether you think it's a net positive or net benefit, the reality is, from a business standpoint, licensure provides a tangible barrier to entry, a moat, if you would, that not anyone can just open up a shop and hang a shingle out and provide physical therapy services, right? Like, that is a competitive barrier to entry that private equity firms, I'm sure, are taking into account. And then there's the whole licensing, credentialing piece of things, insurance contracts and payers. And again, if you can get a large enough pool of beneficiaries, for example, in a geographic region, you have leverage with the payers to increase reimbursement. So there's some of that going on as well. But it's also a built-in revenue model, right? A revenue stream. And then the bigger one, and I think one of the biggest factors that is driving some of this activity in the market, is the fact that you've got a group of asset holders here, being the practice owners, who feel like they're in a bad business and they undervalue what they currently have, right? Meaning that they're likely to acquire, the private equity firms are likely able to acquire these assets at a bargain price or for less than what they would perceive to be the actual value of the business. So that's kind of what we talked about in that interview. And I kind of just wanted to expand on that a little bit, that I think one of the things that happens when you have an industry like healthcare, private practice healthcare, where it is difficult, you are going to get squeezed by the big guys. You don't have the benefits of scale as like a United Healthcare does, or even your local hospital system does. There are increasing costs, like that is a real thing. But what tends to happen is that I think it was Blair Enns and David C. Baker on their podcast, the Two Bobs podcast. I always recommend that to folks. Go listen to it. It's great. In one of their episodes years ago, they talked about this idea of being able to read the label from inside the pill bottle, or the fact that it's very difficult to read the label from inside the pill bottle. And what they meant by that was, if you are inside a tough situation, a challenge, whatever, sometimes you really need an outside party to look at the situation objectively to tell you, yes, this is what's going on, or no, I think you're missing the forest for the trees here, or you're missing this key piece of information. The same can be true when we're stuck in this mindset of, we're in a bad business, it's a challenging business, it's never going to get better, all I can see for the future is decreasing margins and increasing headache. It's very difficult to pull yourself out of that funk in the day-to-day and take a look at objectively what's going on, to see the opportunities, if there are any, or to see the situation for as it truly is. And then you've got this group of buyers, these private equity firms, that are doing just that. They are looking at the pill bottle from the outside, and they see the potential there. But the folks that are running the businesses every day, the practice owners, don't see that. They're stuck in the day-to-day grind. So when your day-to-day is filled with dealing with the Medicare cuts, the staff retention issues, recruiting problems, you tend to view everything through that reactive lens. Call it like a fight or flight response. Your amygdala's going crazy, and you're not able to objectively look at the situation. So I would argue, however, like specifically for private practice healthcare, if you look at the industry objectively, you'll kind of come to the same conclusion the private equity firms have, is that if you take an objective look at the industry, it shows opportunity and potential, a lot of opportunity and a lot of potential. So what I wanted to do is explain that a little bit. So we've done that. Part one is done. And now we're going to look at a few things that I think you can do if you're a practice owner in the healthcare space. You run a small private practice. You're not operating on billions and billions of dollars and huge amounts of scale. What are some practical things you can do to kind of shift your mind out of that fight or flight response? Is there something you can do that'll, one, help make running the business more fun, profitable, but then also kind of give you the headspace to look at the situation objectively. So this is what I recommend to folks. And I kind of stumbled across this kind of by, we'll call it happenstance, call it the nature of the way it was when I purchased the organization. I think I mentioned this in a couple episodes ago when I was talking about acquiring the practice and building value within a healthcare practice and kind of how I stumbled across this. But one of the big things that I think you want to focus on is really just not being in the day-to-day grind as much and taking time to, you hear it all the time, work on the business and not in the business. But let's put like a fine point on that. So if you're a practice owner, a healthcare practice owner, and you feel burnt out or like you're fighting an uphill battle, here's the one thing that I would recommend that I believe is going to make a huge difference in your work life, in the way you view your business, and ultimately, I'm not going to make any guarantees, but I think you'll see an increase in profitability and even net revenue at the end of the day. And this is that recommendation. You're going to set aside one full day of your week, not a Saturday or Sunday, one of the Monday through Fridays. You're going to set one day aside, and it's just going to be called your business work day. And it can look different for different people, and it'll look different in different stages, depending on the projects you have going on, depending on where you're at season-wise in your business, for example. But on this day, you're only going to work on one of the following things. You're going to work on the business in a tangible way, and this could be developing standard operating procedures to guide, routine operations. Could be, staff training maybe, or developing staff training. It could be onboarding processes for employees, whatever. You're going to work on the actual process or the operations taking place in your business, and you're going to do that from a high level. A practical example here is early on, after I purchased the business, maybe it was tail end of 2020 or 2021, I took a whole day and just mapped out an organizational chart for the business. And it was an organizational chart for positions that we didn't even have yet at the organization. But I put it in place because I knew that once we started getting to the point where we were hiring people and building a team, I wanted it to be already set, that there wasn't going to have to be any of this quote unquote building the plane as we're flying it. When it comes to something like organizational charts. So that's an example. So number one, you're going to work on the business in a very tangible way, specific things. You're going to do, number two would be business planning or vision casting, which still falls under working on the business, but I think of it as more high level. So working on the business, practical, tangible, business planning or vision casting. Thinking about the business, number three, and this could fall under vision casting, but really just taking time to set goals. Where do you want to be in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? What do you like about the business? What don't you like about the business? What are some problems you want to fix within the business? Thinking about the business. Again, trying to look at both the positives and the areas for improvement. And then the last one is going to be reading, learning, or self-development in the area specifically of business, entrepreneurship, business ownership, people management, whatever it is. I don't want you taking a CEU course or a continuing medical education course on these days. These days are specifically for you as the business owner to make real progress on the business. So sometimes that means you need to do some reading. Sometimes it means you do some thinking. Sometimes it means you need to put a plan for the next 6 months together, the next quarter together. And sometimes it means, okay, this process really needs to be ironed out. We've got it more or less figured out, but we don't have it codified and put in a system. And I'm not saying that doing these things or taking the time to do this is going to make it rain right away. You're not going to wake up and be like, oh, I started taking a day to just do business work and now I've got $10,000 a month of extra profit. That's not how it works. This is a long-term or long road strategy, long tail strategy here. But what it's going to do is over time, it is going to make the business more, I always say, peaceful to run. Peace is something my wife and I talk about it a lot at home. We've got 6 kids, they're pretty young, and we always talk about what can we do to increase the amount of peace in our home? Not so much I feel okay, but generally, no matter what's going on, like within our our core beings, if you would, there's just kind of this level, tranquil surface of the water. Like that's what you want in your business as well. So again, I've been doing this since about 2020, 2021. And part of the reason I did this was really because I was stuck. I bought a business and it wasn't credentialed for my license. I'm an occupational therapist. I bought a physical therapy practice. So it took me about 6 months before I was able to treat patients just because of the credentialing issues, right? It takes, at the time, it was the tail end of COVID. Medicare was processing applications very, very slowly. So I was in the position of, okay, I've got this business. I can't treat patients. I can't do any of the real day-to-day that a lot of clinicians would find themselves doing. So what is a good use of my time? And what I found was that a lot of my time ended up being focused on some of those practical working on the business pieces. We developed some standard operating procedures. We've got, I think I've mentioned this before, we've got a couple Excel sheets that are operations manuals. We've got one for the clinic and one for like the finance and the billing side of things. And it's basically just a Excel doc or Google sheet. It's got like 50 little tabs, and each tab is a specific process. This is how we call new referrals to schedule them. This is how we onboard new referrals when they come into the clinic. This is the process for delivering or structuring the schedule. This is what a schedule, our map of the schedule, what it looks like. This is how we reach out to physician groups. This is how we follow up with physician groups for plans of care. And then on the billing side is like, this is how we enter a payer into the EMR. This is how we submit claims. This is our process for managing our CM. All of those little things, and they're all built out. And it took a few years to get it to that point. And it's a living document. That's why we use Google Sheets, because every now and then you might swap a vendor out. You might swap a process out. You might say, we were doing this for a while and it wasn't working. A good example of this is early on, we were doing a lot of D2C or direct-to-consumer marketing for direct access patients. And part of that was because I wanted patients in the door quickly. And referral relationships, while they can be beneficial, take a while to develop. Relationships take a while to develop. So we had a process in place for how much we were spending every week on ads, the conversion rates we wanted, the process for reaching out to those. Now we're not really doing a whole lot of D2C because we've got these referral relationships with physician groups. So I was just talking to somebody the other day. It's probably like at the very, very onset, when I first bought the business, we were trying to grow it, I would say probably 75% of the patients that came in through the door were direct to consumer. They had seen our ads on Facebook or Instagram and they were coming into the clinic. And that necessitated a whole process to bring them on board. Now we're in the position where it's probably the other way around. It's probably closer to 75% of the patients that come into the door now are referred to us by doctors and physician groups, workman's comp, some insurance adjusters, things like that. So that's the bulk of our referral sources now. So while we don't run a whole lot of ads, we do every now and then, but it's not a core component of our business as much as it was in the early days. It's not such a cornerstone. It's more like a supplemental marketing piece. We have that process still in the operations manual, but we've updated, there's a little note like, as of this date, we're no longer spending X number per week on ads, whatever. But we did hire a business development specialist, and her whole job is she's basically an account manager, for lack of a better word. She's fostering those relationships with the physicians. She's meeting them. She's getting them documents when they need it. She's all of that kind of stuff. She's acting as the liaison between us and our referral partners. And she's now got a couple tabs of everything that she does. This is what she does on a Monday and a Wednesday and a Friday. This is what she does on Tuesdays and Thursdays. These are the processes. These are the steps. When she goes to reach out to a new physicians group, this is what she does. These are the even links to like Canva, to the brochures that she brings, or the informational packets that she brings. All of that kind of stuff is in this operations manual. And that piece alone has made it incredibly more peaceful to run the business. Because when it comes to a staff person having a question, a team member having a question, I can say, is it in the manual? Yes, it is. Okay, well, just do what the manual says, you'll be fine. Or no, it's not. And then I say, okay, let's figure this out. We figure it out. Now your job, in addition to doing whatever this task is to also go into the manual and create a tab for it. And now next time we don't have to ask the question because it's there, right? So that's been a huge, huge thing for me in the business, is having this operational manual in place. So let's talk specifically about what that might look like in the day-to-day. And I know that some of you might be, maybe you're just starting a practice and it's just you and a front office person, and you don't have a team to run and treat patients while you're not there. This is just like vision casting for the future, but you can do this still in a practical way. Maybe you're not taking a whole day off. Maybe you're just taking half a day. Maybe you're taking just, at Friday at noon, patients stop, and you're spending the rest of the afternoon on what needs to be done in the business. But so I'm going to talk about each of these things, these 4 things, give you a little bit of what I do, what it looks like, and kind of how it's changed over the years or between different seasons, right? Like we're heading into the holiday season now, and that's going to change kind of what I do on these work days. So I'm getting a sip of coffee here. So working on the business, developing standard operating procedures is the big one. Organizational charts, like the infrastructure of the business. Let's call it that. The infrastructure of the business. When I started doing this, again, I would just take Fridays. And it's still that way. Like if you look at the clinic schedule, Fridays, there's just a big blocked out time on my schedule that says Raffi out, business work. And that's what I'm doing. Early on, it was establishing the organizational chart. What I've done over the years has been, maybe there's a new hire. I just did this recently. We just hired this business development person. We've never hired a business development person before. So what I did was, as soon as we posted the job, I spent one Friday thinking about what I wanted this person to do, what their main roles were going to be, how they were going to be judged on success, like what were the factors that we were going to use to determine success or progress, and then what specific tasks they would need to do and what specific information they would need to access. That was one Friday. The next Friday, I said, okay, given what I did last week, I want to put some of this into a way that's easy to manage. So we use Google Classrooms at the clinic. I'm sure you can use something similar, some kind of LMS, internal training. And what I did was I created a course called Business Development Specialist Course, or whatever, training. And all the information in that course it's links to different pieces of information. Like we have a physician marketing list that was linked there. I wrote some processes for the way I thought things needed to go, or the way that things would go. And then over time, this person has gone through and edited them and said, okay, we thought we were going to reach out to physician groups this way, but now we're doing it this way. So she edits it out to reflect what's actually going on. And the reason for this, I find valuable for 2 reasons. One, it means that every time you hire a new person to onboard them, like if we hire an assistant for this person, then they just need to go and review this information. You're putting a lot of work in one time that's going to pay dividends over and over and over again, right? And then the other thing is, like, let's say life happens and somebody's got to leave. Maybe there's a family situation, whatever. They go get another job somewhere else. You're not losing all that institutional knowledge when they leave. You're getting it built along the way, so that if and when they do leave, you have the information to train somebody. So anyways, so that second Friday, I sat down, I put the course together, I wrote down the processes that I thought needed to be done, linked to the important information within the Google Doc or the Google Sheet, and then made a note of what was missing, was specific how to access this list or this report or this whatever, this piece of information. The next Friday, so this is now 3 weeks in, I sat down and I recorded a bunch of screenshot videos of me going through our shared drive about where the information was, how to find things, a little bit about maybe some thoughts about physician outreach, and made like 7 videos. They're very small, like 5 to 10 minute videos, and then added all of that under the course. So now, and then I called it a day. So now we hired somebody, we get them onboarded their first day. We're doing all the HR stuff, getting them set up in ADP and all that, getting their IDs and set up on the benefits and all that kind of stuff. And then what I say is for the rest of the day, here's this course. You're going to log in. You're going to go through it. Come to me with any questions, and we'll kind of brainstorm. We'll think about it. We'll walk you through it. It took her about 2 days. I think she went through all of that information, and they were off to the races, right? Reaching out to physicians, driving referrals. And I don't think this was because I'm going to give you the result. I don't think this was simply because I did the training. It just shows, one, maybe you should consider hiring a business development person. But we increased the first month that this person was working. We went from like 50 referrals, new referrals that were getting scheduled every month to like 70. So, I mean, it was a huge bump by having this person just making connections with physicians. Do I think it was all because I did this onboarding? No, but I think it contributed that they knew they weren't starting from scratch. They had a list, they had the information, they had their understanding of how we thought about business development and physician referral relationships and patient relationships. And we gave this through this onboarding course that we created. We passed along a lot of the mission, vision, values, culture piece that we thought was very important, that we wanted referral sources to know about, right? And it empowered this business development person with that information so that when there was a question or when something came up, they were able to pull from that. So that's part one, working on the business. That's a very tangible example. So if you're just starting out, maybe you're just putting that together for like a front office person, or maybe it's going to be a clinic director, or maybe whatever it is. So working on the business. Business planning or vision casting. What might this look like? Now I'm at the point in the business, this is a few years in, where I think I treated 4 patients last month. So I'm not in the clinic a whole lot. So I have a lot of time to do this, but you might need to, when you're first starting this out, maybe you're starting with half a day and then you're moving to a full day and you're kind of splitting this up. But you're going to take some time and really kind of vision cast for the business, what your goals are, what your the plan to get there. So maybe the first little bit is doing all the SOPs, the operating procedures for what you're doing now that you need filled now, and then you're moving on to thinking ahead to the next hire or to the next goal, whatever it is, opening up a second location or adding this service, whatever it is. What are the pieces that need to be in place? And maybe you might take one of your business days to work on just that. What needs to be done? Or even selecting what that next service is going to be. Do I add, we're going to stick with the physical therapy space just because that's what this example is going to pertain to, because that's what I've been doing. Are we going to add aquatic therapy, or are we going to add pelvic floor therapy, or are we going to add some sort of fitness performance? Pros and cons, think it over. Maybe that one day we're just coming up with what is that next step. The next week, we've selected, let's say it's going to be a running performance lab. What is the plan? What do we need in order to offer that service at a high level in a way that would fit within our culture and our mission and vision and values? These are the needs. What do we have in place? What do we need? Maybe that's a whole day for you. Maybe it's just half a day. And then you can move on to, this is what we have in place. This is what we need. What is our plan to get that? Do we need to hire a new clinician or a running coach? Do we need to develop some educational materials, maybe a course or some videos or whatever? What do we need to drive leads into that area of the business? Do we need to develop ads? Do we need to connect with a local running store or running shoe store or something like that, or a trainer or a gym? Do we need to make some kind of relationship happen to help drive some of those leads? And then how specifically we're going to do the 3 things: market it, sell it, and deliver it. Are we going to create a bunch of video content that we're going to pump out on social media or through ads in order to drive these leads? Or are we going to do a lot of in-person running seminars and performance seminars or something like that at local running clubs. How are we going to actually sell this? Are we going to have these people come into the clinic, into the space, kind of get a screening or an eval done before they jump into the program? Or can we handle this over the phone or virtually? What is the process for actually getting people to swipe a card or to sign up? And then how are we going to deliver this? Is this going to be something that's in the clinic? Is it going to be virtual? Is it going to be a hybrid approach? How is it going to happen? Once you have that piece in place, and okay, what do we need to build out to make that happen? So over the course of a few weeks, you can go from, okay, what is the next service we're going to do, all the way to this is the service we're going to run. It's going to be a running performance lab. This is how we're going to market it. This is how we're going to sell it. This is how we're going to deliver it. And this is who we're going to have to in order to deliver it. Boom. Business planning and vision casting. Number 3 is the thinking about the business. And this is like pie in the sky, not pie in the sky, but like very high level thinking. We're not thinking about like what we're going to do next week. We're not thinking about what we're going to do next quarter even. This is like, what is my long-term vision for the business? Where do I want it to be? What do I like about it? What don't I like about it? What needs to change? What do we need to double down on, for example? And you're going to do that. I mean, I try to do this once a month. What are like the top 3 things that I think are going swimmingly? And what are the top 3 things that I think need to be improved? Boom, boom, boom. Of these things that are going swimmingly, is there anything that I can double down on to maybe increase that growth in the business or that sector of the business or that part of the business? Or is it something that I just need to make sure that I'm encouraging and giving the team, way to go, whatever, recognition for the great work that they're doing? And sometimes that's all it is. Like, okay, I noticed, for example, we got so many referrals in and 90% of them got closed within a week, right? We got them in and into the clinic and scheduled within a week. Like, that is obviously that's something we want to keep replicating, but it's not necessarily something that I can necessarily dump a truckload of money into like ads to make that happen more, right? Like, so what we do is we are going to congratulate the team. We're going to celebrate that. Maybe it's like one of our therapists calls it Chick-fil-A Tuesday. We're going to do a Chick-fil-A Tuesday or something. We're going to do something that celebrates the win, right? Double down on that win, make sure that the team knows that we're achieving something together. I think that's very important for a culture, for the business itself. Because if you're having a rough day and you don't think that things are going well, and then you get one of these, like, oh, we're making an improvement, right? One of these things was, I think a month or so ago, for some reason, we just had like several reviews, several people that just reached out to our info email and just said like, hey, can you let so-and-so know? Like, I was able to, one of them was like brush my hair for the first time since shoulder surgery. And so the next staff meeting, basically what I did was I took a bunch of those and we just went through them in the staff meeting. This is why we're doing what we're doing. This is amazing work. This should be celebrated. This is awesome, right? And that just came about because it was my day to think about the business and what 3 things were we doing well. One of the top ones was we're delivering a really good service that's making an impact in our patients and our customers' lives. That's something we want to celebrate, right? The other thing you think about is like what I think about. You can do it whatever number you want to do. I do top 3 because I like to keep it simple. What are the top 3 things that I wish or I have noticed that we can improve upon? And maybe it's the amount of time it takes to call a referral. Maybe it's the way we follow up with patients who have to cancel last minute. Maybe it's coding or billing or some other process or onboarding staff even. When you have those 2 things, like I said, you're going to maybe double down on what can be doubled down on or celebrate what needs to be celebrated or make a plan to celebrate it with your team. And then for the things that need to be improved upon or can be improved upon, you put a plan for what it's going to look like. When do you want it to be? What's the benchmark for what you would consider success or tangible improvement? What's the timeline for that? Who's going to be responsible for that? What's it going to look like? What process needs to be put in place? And then you're going to implement that. So those are the first 3, working on the business planning, and then thinking about the business. Okay. The last one tends to be pretty broad and pretty open, and that is reading, learning, self-development in the area of business, entrepreneurship, people management, whatever. I tend to do this probably, again, about once a month-ish, give or take. I kind of just do like a mental, I take a mental inventory of, okay, what's been going on, maybe challenges that I've come up with in the business or situations that I've come up with in the business that I just didn't have an answer for right away. And I make a list of those and I start looking, is there a course? Is there a book? Is there some content, maybe a YouTube channel or something like that, that I can go to learn more about this? And I will spend a whole day reading, thinking, and watching YouTube videos, which sounds terrible. Like when you say, what did you do at work today, Dad? Oh, I watched a video on how to, whatever it is. Maybe it's create this kind of ad, or maybe it's deal with this type of HR thing, or whatever it is. But the reality is that's super, super valuable time, because what it allows me to do is I'm gaining skills and hopefully I'm building in things that are going to be implemented in the business that are going to create a positive atmosphere and a positive culture for the team. And if all I'm doing is I'm stuck in the day-to-day and I'm worried about whatever, or I'm thinking about the negative environment that the business is running in and all the bad things that are happening, I'm just not in a mindset of being able to be positive. And I don't know if you've worked in a place, I know I've worked in a few places where the boss or the owner is just always stressed. And it just makes life, even if the business is doing well, it makes life for the team members stressful, because that rubs, like, as the leader, you're setting the tone. And if the team sees you worrying and freaking out and kind of overreacting, or like, that rubs off on them, and that causes just kind of this negative, icky feeling in the business. So it's also a great example, or a great way, this reading, learning, self-development, to take some time to build your own skills and value for the next level. I think there's a great book that's, I watched a video on it, so it might be a book too. It's called like What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And the idea is that people are promoted to the level of their own incompetence in the corporate world, right? Like we promote until they just kind of max out. In business ownership is the same way. We rise to the level of our competence, and then if we want to reach the next level or make it to the next step, if you would, it requires growth on our part. Like, the type of leader that I am now is not the type of leader that I was 4 years ago, and it's because we've had to change. I've had to change as the business has changed and grown, and processes have shifted and all of that. If you stay stagnant, you can only expect stagnation. So, as the organization, or as your vision for the future of your business becomes more clear, as you're doing these exercises, you're going to see deficiencies, right? Like, I didn't even know how I would manage people. I didn't even know how I would develop an executive leadership team, for example, or how I would do this piece or that piece, or do what is required to reach this goal. All of those things that I don't know how are areas that you are going to improve on over time if you do this, because you're going to see it and you're going to say, okay, this is a deficiency that I have that I need to work on in order for the business to thrive to the next level, or to step to the next level. So those are the 4 things: work on the business, business planning, and then thinking about the business, and then reading, learning, self-development. So hopefully that has helped you. I can tell you, I've been doing this since 2020, 2021, and these are, here's what it's done for me. Number one, it has just given me dedicated time to fix, quote unquote, problems in the business that are always nagging, but never get done if you're in the clinic all day, right? Like, if you're in the day-to-day work, some of those business problems just kind of fester. You kind of go along with them because they're not tearing the business apart. It's not like hair on fire, but it's something that's causing friction. It gives me dedicated time to think about them, to plan, to work, to get better at it. Number 2, and this is probably the bigger one for me, it gets me excited about the business and the team. Like, when I sit down and I think about the business, I do the 3 positives and the 3 areas for improvement. Those 3 positives get me amped sometimes. Like, man, we're doing great work. This is awesome. These are great people. I love our team at the clinic. Short of, and I tell this to all, I've worked with a lot of teams, right? I had a very cool consulting experience with a core team that was awesome. I would still, if they needed anything, I'd probably want to jump on a plane and go help them, right? Like, you build strong relationships. A part of that is the way that I am as a person. I'm a relationship-based type individual. But this team at the clinic is probably the most fun team, the most enjoyable team I've ever worked with. And part of that is maybe because I have like a hand in really setting the culture, and I really like what we've created here. But every time I think about the business and what's going well, I get excited about it. And then I want to share that with the team, and it gets me excited about the team. So that's one thing that has been super beneficial for me. The next thing that it's done, it helps get my head out of the daily grind and into that 30,000 foot view where you can kind of see everything from above, right? Like, it's very difficult. And there have been times where I've hired consultants and advisors to be that objective third party that can look at that pill bottle and read the label to me. But even just doing what we're doing now, taking the time to just think about the business, setting time away to get out of the daily grind, to take that 30,000 foot view, kind of gives you some of that perspective. And then the last thing it's done is it highly has reduced the stress of running the business. And there's still times we go through that are tough, that we know, like, okay, this payer made a mistake and now we've got to go hunt for tens of thousands of dollars and fix it and, get the coding right or whatever. And that is stressful. But at the same time, it's stress imposed on this context. The background is me knowing that the business is doing well, or at least I'm happy with the direction the business is going, or knowing that I'm taking steps to improve it, right? It's one thing to see this challenge, like, oh my gosh, it's just another thing I've got to do. It's another thing that's going bad, whatever. If you're not taking the time to look objectively at the business and see, okay, there are deficiencies, but this is what we're doing to fix it, you just get stuck in that negative mindset. At least taking the time to take that 30,000 foot view has allowed me to, even in times of stress, even in times of challenge, to just look at it and kind of take a deep breath and say, okay, this is a tough time, but look at the progress we've made, look at what we're doing, the progress we're hoping to make in the future, or that we're planning to make in the future. So if you're a practice owner and you've been stressed, you're feeling burnt out, I would highly, highly recommend taking one day a week to just do business work. And it could be any one of these four things. I would maybe recommend starting with the thinking of the business, that high level, maybe the top 3 things that you think are going well and the top 3 things that you think are needing for improvement. And that will help you the next time you sit down to build those standard operating procedures, to do all that kind of stuff, put the plan in place to fix those things that you want to fix. So anyways, I hope that helps you, that you found it entertaining and insightful. If you like the show, share it with somebody that you think would find it. Head on over to iTunes, leave us a rating or review, all those things, subscribe, whatever. If you want to get show notes and stuff like that delivered right to your inbox, you can go to betteroutcomes.show, sign up there, just enter your email address. We'll send you an email when a new episode goes live. If you want to find the book, Better Outcomes, A Guide to Humanizing Healthcare, you can find that at book.betteroutcomes.show. And if you want to hire me to speak or to train at your organization, speaking.rafisalazar.com. For anything else, the articles, the archives of the podcast, videos and interviews, anything like that, you can head on over to rehabupracticesolutions.com. Until the next time, be safe, be healthy. I will talk to you then.